Hi, hello, and welcome back to episode. This will be the sixth part of With a Card Up His Sleeve, What Could He Achieve? By The Earth, the Wind, the Flame. Chapter 13 POV Soteria. The Bat. The alley Tim was in brought out something in him. The ever-present ache in his muscles seemed to migrate to his myocardial ones and pulse deeply, even though his cardiac muscles never exhausted. Tim had no good reason to be there. He couldn't even justify standing at the dumpster to himself. Just like he couldn't justify the sick urge to visit his gravestone in Bristol Cemetery. He hadn't lived near it for years. Yet here he was, the first place that truly felt like home to him. Not the isolated walls of the Drake Mausoleum, the actual one, not the manor, where he had tried to crash for a few days. Not even the apartment he rented out under his legal name. Yet still, here he was. Dick's visit had brought out some of his worst childhood memories. His first hug and the subsequent tragedy. He didn't know why he was so attached. Tim blew out a breath and crouched. He saw the faded graffiti on the dumpster, a cruelly drawn penguin with devil horns and a spear through its chest, and red paint, he hoped it was paint, around it. Yikes, had he really been that bloodthirsty? It was a young boy's scratchy scrawl, a desperate mark on the territory he painstakingly gloved out for himself. The thought of that scared, feral kid barely surviving on stolen scraps and a too-sharp mind made another thing clench in his chest. He shoved the feeling down hard. Emotions were liabilities. He hadn't even learned that on the streets. He had learned these lessons on his mother's knee with her nails digging into his shoulders and scratching lazy circles on his scalp. He had learned that with silences and ignorance and emotional pain. And he was sure the sentiment was echoed all throughout Gotham. Emotions make you predictable. Slow. He learned that lesson repeatedly, each time with a new bruise or a fresh cut, where anger clouded his rational thinking and fear clouded his sensibilities. He was Colossi now, bringing damnation to those who deserve it. Soteria, the one who brought salvation to the broken. The dealer who knew every hidden card. He's not that kid anymore who beat and 3 others just to feel. He had control. He had to have control. A gust of wind, smelling faintly of ozone and burning refuse, swept through the alley. It carried it with a whisper. Gotta blow the whole place up, Greg. Boss M wants us to show that bitch at the Real who's in charge here, right, boys? A scream cut through the fog. It was feminine, high-pitched, loud, really loud, but young. Screaming for help from someone. Whom? Red Hood? Shit. He was acting nondescript earlier, but he couldn't stop his head snapping up. That wasn't the usual Gotham background noise. Usually it was adults screaming and gunshots firing, and yells of pain. That was raw, unfiltered panic. His calm, a direct line to his network, was silent. He left it at the Real. He wanted a moment of quiet, a moment to indulge his pointless, self-flagellating pilgrimage. Idiotic. Now he had no way to contact his team. At a mistake, in a growing ledger, no matter how much he tried to mitigate it by having contingencies upon contingencies. He was going to have to do this on his own. A low rumble vibrated through the cracked pavement, followed by a distant, concussive boom that rattled the few remaining panels in the ejected abandoned apartments. An explosion? A series or just here? The man questioned who was the target. His mind raced. He had 5 minutes max if that was a warning shot. He needed to piece it together. Black Mask, it had to be. Boss M, new shipments for BM, explosive. Mafia engaging in combat wielding explosive experiments on gunpowder in BM territory. Scarecrow? No, it had been Black Mask itself. The news had been quiet on the psychopathic gang leader since Tim had dismantled his drug operation and siphoned off his lieutenants. Romancionist, it seemed, was not the one to go quietly. This wasn't an attack. It was a personal message. A final, desperate middle finger flicked in Tim's general direction. His brain unfalteringly still raced. The kids. The words put a bitter taste in his mouth. Black Mask always hit where it hurt, always targeted the vulnerable points. And that was one reason the Red Hood hadn't eliminated him yet. The very children Tim had, in his own twisted way, sworn to protect. He remembered Rosie with her wide, knowing eyes, and Faisal, the scared one who clung to his side just last week. He was running already, and he hadn't even realized over half a decade of traversing Gotham underbelly kicked in. He vaulted over bins, climbed up rusted fire escapes, his senses hyper alert. The smell of burning rubber grew stronger, acrid and sickening. Ahead, a plume of greasy black smoke stained the already grey sky. He reached the mouth of a narrow passage. One he knew led to a common hangout for the younger kids. A makeshift town of corrugated iron and discarded tarps. The passage was choked with debris, and the sounds of terrified whimpers mingled with frantic shouts and pleas. "Help! Sotiria!" Sotiria didn't think. He didn't allow the horror to set in. Control. He had to control. Calculate vectors, assess structural integrity, and map escape routes. The primer explosion had torn open a gas line, and smaller detonations were still rippling through the flimsy structures. The kids were trapped, huddled under collapsing planks, and probably part of a fear. Some of them hadn't even had their first rogue attack yet. Childhood trauma. Here he comes. Stop. Focus. Move. This way. He barked. He dove into the chaos, ignoring the searing heat. A splintered beam crashed down, as he tackled the boy with a dead name, who was pleading for someone to take him. "Don't leave me here, please. I'll be good if you let me go with you. I swear." Control. He set them both skidding to the safety as the concrete dust rained down. He ripped a burning tarp away from a terrified girl, pulling her clear. His hands sank. He moved with a brutal efficiency as he shut out any memories of his burning past. One little girl, no older than 8, was frozen, staring wide-eyed at a wall of flame. She reminded him too much of himself. Years ago, watching his own world burn. "Why are we burning the hunting lodge, Mother? Hello? Mom? Dad?" He snatched her up, shielding her face against his chest, sprinting towards relative safety of the main alley. He made it. He got him out. A dozen kids caught him crying, but alive. The sun beating down on his face had never felt so good. But this was not the time. There could be other explosions, and this was probably not the only bomb they planted. He pushed them forward, urging them to run. Fatima, make sure the younger kids get to safety. You know the code. I don't care if it's your long dead relative. Don't stop. The armor he was wearing burned. The smell of it burning was disgusting, though he barely felt the heat. He got a vest off, and more or less threw it in the direction of the previous explosion. He couldn't ethically dispose of it anyway. Sue him. As he turned to check for struggles, a secondary explosion, louder and more violent than the first, erupted behind him. The ground blocked. A wave of superheated air slammed into him, throwing him forward. He hit the burning pavement hard, the impact pushing the breath out of his lungs and sending pain along his side. Sharp shreds of metal and concrete whistled past his ears, some embedding themselves in his arm and shoulder. It had to happen after he had taken the vest, obviously. Pain. A cold, sharp knife twisting in his flesh, a thousand little cuts screaming together. His vision whited out as his ears rang. Control. The pain was distant. It had to be disdained. He was dulled by adrenaline and years of self-imposed numbness. He pushed himself up, tasting blood and grit. His vision swam again for a moment. For a moment, he pushed up himself regardless. He heard sirens. Closer now, the frantic shouts of news reporter. Shit, he had been too focused on the kids, too caught up in the immediate threat to remember his one cardinal rule: never be seen. He stumbled, catching a glimpse of a camera crew, spotlight glaring, their lenses pointing direct at the devastation, directly at him. He was a silhouette against the orange glow, a figure emerging from the smoke, holding his blinking arm. If he became a meme, he was going to go on his villain arc. Well, no time to dwell. He forced himself to run, limping out fast, melting back into the shadows before, hopefully, anyone could react. He had safe houses scattered across Gotham, anonymous bold holes known only to him. He chose one deep in the East End, a forgotten basement apartment under a neglected laundromat. The small space was sterile, impersonal, just how he liked it. He peeled off his ruined jacket, wincing at the fabric stuck to his flesh wounds. The cuts were deep, ragged probably from shrapnel. His shoulder throbbed with a dull, insistent ache, a bone bruise at best, a hairline fracture at worst. He didn't waste time on self-pity. He moved with practiced precision. Alcohol wipes, antiseptic spray, gauze, medical tape. He patched himself up countless times before. The routine as familiar as dealing a deck of cards. Each sharp sting of the antiseptic was just data, a signal from his damaged body, nothing more. Tim was fine. He was always fine. Just another day in Gotham, just another time putting himself back together. Alone. The adrenaline started to fade, leaving behind a hollow exhaustion. But he wouldn't let it touch him. He would push it down like everything else. He was a survivor. He had to be. But hell, it hurt. Not just the sharper, but the memories. He hadn't thought of Timothy Jackson Drake in a long time. He hadn't let himself think of Timothy Drake. Control. He shook his head and laid down to get some rest. POV. The Bat. The Batcave, hummed with its usual loud thrum, the fluorescent lights buzzing in rhythm with the ballast conducting electricity. Bruce stood before the main console, analyzing satellite imagery of a new gang, Drex, and the turf war breathing in the Narrows. Jason was supposed to be there, but he hadn't been scheduled for an important sit-down with his lieutenants. A meeting he already missed once, a detail that still chafed at Bruce's carefully conducted stoicism. Jason had been drugged. His boy had been taken to his own safe house by an unknown entity. He had wanted Dick to stay in after the admittedly failed undercover operation, but as his kids were fond of doing, Dick had refused. He was out socializing with a new set of contacts he deemed necessary for street-level intel, which was important. They had it on strong belief that Soteria and the dealer both had contacts out and about on the streets, and that he had contacts with knowledge of the Bat's ways. But a part of him worried for his son, his eldest, and his first foray into the amazing worlds his children had built. Damon and Stephanie, Alice, were accounted for both at school. He would almost say that the cave was peaceful. Of course, in Gotham, there could be no such thing. Oracle's voice got through the quiet, sharp, and urgent. Bruce, there's been a major incident. Ali bombed him. Perpetrators unknown, sponsors unknown, live feeds coming in. The screen shifted, replacing the map of Park Row with chaotic kaleidoscope of orange flames, black smoke, and flashing emergency lights that Bruce had somehow grown familiar with. The cacophony of sirens, shouting, and dizzying screams filled the cave. Bruce's jaw tightened. This was deliberately destructive, cruel even to the children who lived in that alley, way slum, and the nearby Jason Todd Wayne Memorial Shelter. Casualties? Casualties, he grunted, already processing the visual data, identifying structural weaknesses, potential secondary explosions, calculating optimal rescue routes. Unknown. DCPD and the fire department just arrived. Reporters say a civilian pulled some kids out just before the secondary blast. Barbara's voice held a note of surprise. Bruce zoomed in on a particularly vivid feed from a news helicopter. The camera shook, then stabilized, focusing on the epicenter of the distraction. And then he saw the civilian. A figure, lean and quick, emerging from the smoke and flames, silhouette against the inferno. He was dragging one kid, one child, pushing another, his movement almost too fast to track. The secondary explosion hit, throwing the figure back, and he stumbled, fell in the way Bruce knew would hurt, with a mild concussion as best, and surprisingly, got back up. The shock would have been much for a civilian, and Bruce would certainly not want any of his kids in that situation, no matter how trained they were. The figure got up, clenched his arm before disappearing into the shadows. But not before the camera caught a clear, if brief, shot. Bruce froze. Black hair, blue eyes. A haunted, determined set to his jaw, even though the grit and blood. His mind reeled, sifting through memories, cross-referencing images faster than he could input on any computer. The dealer, the kid from the gala, sharp calculating, with eyes that saw too much. The one who played him on his own game, who manipulated Gotham Elite with an unreeling ease. The one whose identity had been remaining frustratingly elusive, masked by the layers of a fake company and automated responses. Soteria, the whisper on the streets, the ghost of Crime Alley who fed the hungry and patched up the beaten. The one Jason had described with a grudging respect he rarely showed for anyone outside the family. It was impossible. Two distinct entities, yet the face, the build, the movements, they're all the same, or variation of a theme. Run facial recognition, Bruce commanded, his voice tight, on a figure emerging from the alley, cross-reference with every database we have. He looks young, no older than 17. Civilians, no associates, rock files, every identity registered in Gotham centers since 2005. Already on it, V. Oracle replied, a frantic flurry of keystroke audible. No match, nothing even close. It's like he doesn't exist. The system keeps flagging him as anomaly. I would say I have better image of him, but there's none with the exact facial structure. An anomaly. Bruce stared at the frozen image on the screen, zoomed in the fleeting glimpse of those striking blue eyes. He saw himself, not the playboy Brucey or the detective he prided himself on being, but a young, unyelled boy had sworn an impossible crusade in the hellscape of a city that was Gotham. A boy alone, armed only with intelligence and a burning need to protect. An urge buried deep beneath years of discipline and satiated by his children roared to life. The boy, whoever he was, needed home. He needed protection. He needed family. His children would joke that it was Bruce's adoption tendencies and how he was weak for blue eyes and black hair. But Bruce saw himself, 30 years younger and full of resolve to help Gotham, to help other children, and to protect his city. But his mind clearly hated him as the thought rose unbidden, as it echoed what Alfred had said when he first adopted Dick. Master Bruce, adoption. Are you sure it is best for the young lad? Are you helping him because you want to save him, or are you helping him because you wanted to save yourself? He shook himself as he stood up and launched the Batmobile into the glaring Gotham daylight, the sun a brutal contrast to the perpetual toiling of his usual haunts. Where could he have gone? But first, Oracle, is it impossible for Batman to be one on the side of the explosion? You already set up, haven't you? And don't lie, I can hear the Batmobile in the background. Barbara sighed. Yes, Batman should show up on the site of the explosion, and it's best if you investigate directly. Most security cameras got taken out in the first explosion, and the news aren't running direct footage of the scene. He pulled up the forensics reports from the bombing site. On a scowl display, and mentally prepared what he was going to say when he inevitably had to question the children. Etta, 1 minute. As he stepped out of Batmobile, the first thing that hit him was the smell. He had fought 1,000 opponents, and yet the smell of burning flesh and rubber always seemed to get to him. Oracle focused on the particulative matter collected by the batsuit atmospheric sensors from the blast zone. He commanded, his voice a low growl. Anything unusual? Any unique chemical signatures not consistent with standard explosives or their samples from Crime Alley proper? A pause, filled only by the soft click of Barbara's keyboard. It was Black Mask, reporter saying, running analysis on the sample now B. The buzz was peculiar. Not standard C4, not even Sonos's usual MLO. A mix of readily available industrial compounds, repurposed, but there's something else, a faint trace of very specific rare metallic dust, and a unique blend of synthetic polymers, almost like a custom fabricated material that shattered on impact. Bruce's mind clicked. Custom fabricated, consistent with sub-built tech. Also, Oracle continued, my citywide traffic analysis picked up a subtle anomaly in the minutes following the blast, a slight, almost imperceptible surge in pedestrian flow through a specific network of disused service standards and maintenance roads in East End, leading towards an abandoned industrial complex near the docks. It's too small for public notice, but it's an atypical pattern. Someone skilled, moving quickly, deliberately avoiding main through routes. That was it. Not direct surveillance, and it had a higher chance of being inaccountable, but the ripple effect of a ghost moving through the city. And even though the boy was undoubtedly a master of evasion, he had left a trail, which Bruce would follow. Bruce nodded, a grim satisfaction settled over him. Plot the probable trajectory based on the chemical signature and the pedestrian anomalies. Focus on the area with disused basement or forgotten industrial spaces. Look for any faint, residual electromagnetic interfaces that could indicate high-frequency, low-power personal electronics. He found himself in the East End, near a laundromat. He searched the abandoned building, every sense alert, top to bottom, until he found the hidden entrance to a basement and surprisingly well-organized living space. The boy was there, shirtless, a first aid kit open beside him, asleep. Probably. He observed the boy for a moment, the gala coming back to him. Is this your card, the Ace of Spades? Yes. A proud smile above. In the time Bruce was lost in memories, the boy breathing had changed. It was carefully the same, but there was a tightness in his chest and a controlled quality to his breath. A calming pattern. Inhale for 4, hold for 7, exhale for 8. You're hurt, Batman growled. His voice amplified just enough to carry through the air, but softened with a subtle, uncharacteristic concern. The boy spun onto his feet, his movement fluid and immediate despite the multitude of injuries Bruce could see. His eyes, desiring blue, widened, betraying a flicker of surprise, then hardening into something cold and unreadable. He had no move to run, but his stance shifted, preparing for a fight he couldn't win. Batman, he said, his voice flat, devoted of emotion. To what I owe this pleasure. Batman stepped forward, his cape sweeping around him. You saved those children. You were caught in the explosion. And the boy's voice was sharper now. You risked your own life. Batman insisted, even though he wasn't quite sure what he was trying to plead. He reached forward to clasp the boy's shoulder. The boy flinched, and then it happened. A faint hiss. And suddenly, intense pressure. Heavy-duty clamps shot out from the ceiling, their metal jaws closing with startling speed, binding his arms and legs to the center supporting beam on the roof. Solid, not lethal, but escapable, he strained to reach lockpicks in his gloves. You, he grated, his voice raw. The dealer, Sotiria, the anomaly. The boys gave a tight, humorous smile. All of the above, and not at all. He gestured vaguely at the clamps. A letter insurance. Sorry about that. You're predictable, Batman. Always appearing just where you're last needed. Or most. You risked your life for those children. Batman, no, Bruce repeated, ignoring the debate, trying to reestablish the narrative. You're a child. I want to offer you a sanctuary, a safe place. The boy scoffed, a bitter sound that grated on Bruce's ears. Sanctuary? From what? From Gotham? There is no sanctuary from Gotham, Batman. Only temporary truces. And protection? You talk of protection while you teach your children to cheat death, not to live. You teach them to fight the inevitable, to prolong the suffering. What kind of lesson is that? He took a step closer, his eyes sharp, piercing, and Bruce felt a cold dread settle on his stomach. This wasn't a criminal he was facing. This was something else. Something disturbingly familiar, the face of his failure spoken by another blue-eyed, black-haired boy. Everyone dies, Batman. Everyone. You, me, your little flock of brightly colored birds. The only difference is how you prepare them for it. You tell them not to kill, to uphold the moral code that has no place in the city. You condemn them to endless cycle of violence, to putting villains back on the streets, to hurt more people, to ensure your crusade never ends. You call that justice. I call it cruelty. The words stung Bruce like physical blows. He felt a desperate urge to argue, to defend his methods, his core belief, but the boy's gaze was relentless, seeing too much, too deeply. I teach my children to survive, the boy continued, his voice dropping to a near whisper, but laced with a cold, cutting venom. I like kids, Bruce's brain automatically supplied. I teach them to adapt, to use every advantage, and look death in the eye, and spit in its face because the only real rule in Gotham is survival. And sometimes, surviving means getting your hands dirty. It means removing the threat permanently, if necessary. You condemn it, but do you think Penguin would have stopped if I just apprehended him, like you do? He would have hurt another alley, another group of kids, my responsibility. Penguin? What did that have to do with the bombing? He paused, letting the words hang in the air. You claim immortal high ground, but your hands are clean only because you outsourced the dirty work, or because you let the rot fester until it consumes everything. You let a monster like Black Mask live, and then he comes to kill innocent children. What kind of wrong is that, Batman? My wrong saves lives. Your right prolongs suffering. Bruce struggled, not just against the restraints, but against the crushing weight of the boy's words. He wanted to tell him that his methods, his system, were born of necessity, a desperate need to protect. He wanted to explain that he preferred to have a system, an order, a way to survive without losing himself entirely, like he knew he would. Because if he started killing, then the world would have known that there was no hope left, no way to justice other than death. But the words lodged in the throat, choked by an uncomfortable truth in the boy's accusation. He did let the monsters live. He did adhere to a code that sometimes felt impossible in a city like Gotham. And he was too emotionally crippled to admit that he knew, deep down, that his children, his wonderful children, Dick, Diamond, Jason, Steph, Cass, would have found a way to protect Gotham, regardless of his intervention, just with a far less structured and organized approach than what he had put in place. The boy walked over to a small console, his finger moving with fluid precision. The pneumatic clamps hissed again, releasing Bruce. He landed silently, his muscle coiled, ready to strike, but the boy made no aggressive move. He simply stood there, a ghost in the dim light, watching him. You don't need to save me, Batman, the boy said, turning back to him, his voice devoid of emotion. You need a reality check. Now get out. And Bruce could not find any words to explain himself. No defense against the accusation the boy had lodged. His throat felt closed, and he finally understood why his kids hid when the word was too much. Why Dick ran to Bloodhaven, or why Jason went to his safe houses empty except for some books and the stale scent of mildew. And so Bruce went, leaving the injured boy, the anomaly, to his own devices, back to his cave, his home, to the shadows he so expertly commanded. And so, faced with his failures, Bruce ran. I'm sorry if you heard anything in the background. My cat was going around the microphone, and yeah, that might pick something up. Other than that, the special I have recorded, I have the thumbnail, I have even the go for it from the alpha. I just have 2 hours of unedited footage, and hope you have a good day. I wish you a good night or a good day. Go to sleep if it's 3 a.m. or something like that.